And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. On today's program we are going to be making something that for some of you will be a very familiar dish. Some of you've probably heard of it, and some of you, like me, just love it and make it quite often. It's called shepherd's pie, and along with that we're going to have some steamed green peas, and it's one of my favorites. Originally it was started as a dish that the people would use up their leftover lamb or leftover cooked beef, and then they would make this real savory bottom part of the filling, and then you cover it with mashed potatoes, and then you cover it with cheese, and of course put it in the oven to melt the cheese. I've kind of adapted it a little bit. I've been making it for years, and it's absolutely delicious. I've adapted it to use just really lean ground beef. And so the first thing I want to do, I've got my skillet. Well, let me tell you what we've done so far. For time's sake, I went ahead and peeled and cubed some just white potatoes, and I've already got those on the stove, and they're coming up to a boil, and we're going to make mashed potatoes out of that. But I figured everybody knows how to peel a potato and just cube it and put it in a pot. So go ahead, and the potatoes are already started, so you can start that first because that does take the longest. So the potatoes are coming up to a boil, and then we're going to take, now today I'm just using really lean ground round from the grocery store, and I got 2 packages of it because I just did not know how much that I like to use about 3 pounds, and they didn't have a 3-pound package, so I went ahead and just got 2 packages of ground round. So you can use, depending on your size. This will feed probably 6 to 8 people. And around here we like to eat, so I went ahead and got just the extra, put that in a skillet, and just let that start browning up. And while that is cooking, what I'm going to do is just start dicing up an onion and some celery. You can customize this dish to be however you like it. You could use carrots, you could use peas, you could use leftover vegetables, you could use whatever you had. I just have always made it with celery and onions. That's just kind of a traditional thing with me, but by all means you could use, if you don't like celery, don't use it. Put something else in it. That's one thing I do try to do in cooking, is I try to make recipes that you can adapt to however you like. Maybe you don't like a particular ingredient. I happen to be a very, very picky eater. There are just some things I do not like, will not eat them, will not even try them in some cases. So I do try to make things that you can adapt to your own likes or dislikes. Onions in this recipe is kind of central. It just adds so much flavor to it, and I do love cooked onions. So just dice up your onion in a fairly small dice. You don't want it to be too large, but you don't want to mince it too fine. Just kind of, 1/4-inch cubes, however you can dice your onion. And if you'll notice, you won't see my eyes tearing up when I cut onions. And I have found a secret. I wear contact lenses, and so if I have my contacts in, I could chop onions all day long. So you'll never see me tearing up with an onion. That's why I use them quite often. I know a lot of people just really end up real teary-eyed, and I don't know why, but I guess the contact covers whatever the onion bothers. So when you get that chopped, just put it in your skillet. And I'm going to turn mine up just a little tiny bit. Get your onion in there. And you could, by all means, if you had leftover roast beef, maybe you made a roast one day and you had some roast beef left over, you could use leftover roast beef, or leftover pork would be good. Maybe you did a pork roast and you just want to use the leftover of the pork roast. That would be fine. You could use, traditionally, like I said, I believe this recipe started in England. You could use ground lamb if you had, maybe you did a leg of lamb and you had some left over. The next thing I'm going to use is some celery. Celery is one of my favorite vegetables, and I honestly do think that it is underused in cooking. A lot of people just think it needs to be a crudité with some dip on a platter of raw vegetables, but really celery adds so much flavor to any dish that you put it in, and I just love it. I love it raw, I love it steamed, I love it sauteed, I love it any way, stuffed with peanut butter. By all means, use these little celery leaves. Wash your celery, use the leaves. A lot of people just discard them, but they really, truly add so much flavor. There's so much celery flavor in the leaves, so don't throw those away. Use those in your cooking and just chop them right up with your celery. You want to make the celery pieces about the same as your onion pieces were. You know, 1/4-inch dice, something along those lines, and that looks like a lot. That's because I really like celery. You could use less if you wanted it. I just love it, so I tend to put a lot of celery in things that I cook. And my potatoes have finally come up to a little bit of a simmer here, so let me get those stirred real quick like. I've got celery going everywhere on the stove. Let me just kind of turn this. You just want to brown this is what you're doing. You're browning the ground beef. Now I chose ground round today because it's leaner, it's healthier than a ground beef. It's the one that's marked in your grocery store, the 85-15 blend. That means it's 85% meat and 15% of the fat. You can get, you know, 80-20, which is chuck, which for hamburgers to me is the only thing to use for hamburgers because that fat does add so much flavor. But you could use the really lean, the 97 or 93.7 if you wanted to. You could use the really, really lean ground beef. You could use whatever you have because we're going to drain off the excess fat when it gets, you know, a little bit more. Right now I'm going to stir my potatoes, and you know the trick, if everybody out there, I'm sure those seasoned cooks out there know this, but for you beginners, you always start your potatoes in cold water. Anytime you're boiling potatoes, always start them in cold water. If you put them in hot water to begin with, you get this little fuzzy coating on the outside of the potatoes, and I just don't like that. So always start your potatoes in cold water for those of you beginning cooks out there. And I do want to encourage everybody to get into the kitchen, get in behind your stove and in your sinks and your cutting boards and start cooking again. It's time that we control what goes into our bodies and into our diets, and you can do that when you cook from scratch. We're going to go to a quick little break right now, and when I come back, we're going to just keep sauteing up and season this meat mixture up, and I'll show you how to complete shepherd's pie in just a few moments. I'll be right back with you. Hey, and welcome back to Everyday Manna. Now, over the break, I just finished browning up the ground round. Remember, we started with ground round, and we chopped up some celery and some onions, and we've just got that sauteing in a skillet, and it just browned up, and I just drained all of the excess fat off, because you want to do that no matter what kind of ground beef that you use, or you could use ground chicken or ground turkey or whatever you wanted in this recipe. You could use those. You could substitute that by all means, but make sure that you drain off the excess fat. Then what you want to do is add tomato sauce, just canned tomato sauce that you can buy in any grocery store. We're going to start out with 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, and I'm going to stir that, and I'm going to see how much more that I might possibly need to add, and I think I probably am going to need to add. You don't want this too liquidy. You don't want it, you kind of want a little bit of a firm filling, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. But you want it to have, plenty of sauce in there, and I am going to need to add. So I went ahead and got a 1 8-ounce can or a 16-ounce can, and then one little small 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. So you could add, for 3 pounds, that's about what you're going to need. You will need to just sort of judge that on your own, and then add the other can of just ground, or excuse me, of tomato sauce. You could use you know, your own homemade tomato sauce if you make your own. You probably wouldn't want to use a diced tomato, although I guess you could, but you just really want the sweetness that the tomato sauce adds. And you see how that's just plenty moist, but yet it's still a good thick consistency. At this point, you would want to go ahead and preheat your oven to about 375 degrees or so. Just what you're going to do there is melt the cheese. So you want to have your oven at about 375, 400, somewhere in there. It's, you know, you don't have to be exact on that because all you're going to be doing is melting your cheese. Our potatoes are coming along. I've got a little small pot here with about an inch or so of water, and I'm going to bring that up to a boil because we're going to just do simple side with this. It's just some frozen peas, some buttered frozen peas that I just love frozen peas, and they just take a minute to cook, and you can just, you know, just use your frozen peas. So we're going to bring that water to a boil. To your meat mixture, you are going to add seasoned salt. Now, if you'll notice up to this point, I have not added any salt because we're going to use just seasoned salt. You can find that in the spice section of any grocery store out there. I love it. It's just a seasoned salt. It's got a little bit of spice to it, just a little bit of heat. I'm going to add, because I do like things spicy. I love to have things with a little bit of heat to it, and so I'm going to add probably about 2 tablespoons or full. You adjust that up or down depending on your likes, however you like yours to be. And you start out with about, I said teaspoons, but I meant about 2 tablespoons or so. Start out with that, and then some freshly ground pepper. I'm not going to add any salt until I taste it. Now, I'm a firm believer you taste your seasoning as you go along. I like a lot of pepper, so I'm going to add, you know, quite a bit of freshly ground pepper to it, and then just kind of let that blend and stir it all together. And then we're going to taste real quick and see where we are on our seasoning. That's just the best way to test your food, is to just taste it and see. Nope, I do not need any salt. It's perfectly good. The vegetables, the celery still has just a little bit of crunch to it, which is what I want. And basically, the base of your shepherd's pie is done. So just let that go. Now we've got our potatoes. They're almost ready to start mashing. And we've got a little saucepan here that we're going to just do some frozen peas in. Now today when I went to the store, they had some beautiful strawberries and they smelled so good. I couldn't resist them. I know it's just a little bit early for strawberries, but you can go ahead and buy them. If they smell like strawberries, then they're going to have a good flavor, and these do. We're going to just cap them, we're going to slice them, and we are going to bake for dessert. We're going to have kind of like a strawberry shortcake. We're going to take help from the grocery store because, you know, we're all busy, and we're just going to get, I bought a sour cream pound cake. You could use angel food cake. You could make your own shortcakes. You could use the little pastry things that they sell many times right there by the grocery store, or buy the strawberries in your grocery store. I just absolutely love my grocery store here makes a sour cream pound cake that is delicious, and pound cake is my favorite cake. It's just wonderful. And so I like to just slice that. Mike likes angel food cake, so sometimes I'll buy an angel food cake. The boys like angel food cake, and we'll just slice the angel food cake and put strawberries over it and make your own. You can make your own shortcakes. I do make a recipe sometimes where I will use Bisquick, and I will make homemade shortcakes, and I'll do that. We'll do that one day. Because it's a little early in the season, I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of sugar at this point while my supper is still working. I'm going to add just a little bit of sugar, and when you add it to your add sugar to your fruits, and just kind of stir it in and let it sit, that will naturally sweeten the strawberries. It adds just a little bit of sweet. Maybe they're a little tart that day that you bought them. Add a little sugar to them. Let them set. That's called macerating your fruit. And it just kind of brings out the sugars of the fruit, and just let it set, and it'll be absolutely delicious in just a couple of minutes. Let's check our potatoes. They are ready in just a moment or two. My water has come up to a boil, so I'm going to take the lid off. I've got about an inch of water. Remember, that one's my sugar. I certainly don't want to add that. And salt your water at this point. Just add a little tiny bit of salt, maybe a teaspoon or so. And just frozen peas. I love just frozen peas, and just put them in. Kind of give them a little bit of a stir. I'll use my potato spoon here. Put the lid back on, let them come back up to a boil and steam. And then at the end, we're just going to add a little bit of butter. And we're going to take another quick little break. And when I come back, we're going to put the shepherd's pie together, get it in the oven, finish dessert, and then we're going to eat. I'll be right back in just a few moments. Hey, and welcome back. And we are going to finish our shepherd's pie. Our peas have come up to a boil. What you want to do is just take the lid off, because you're going to let all of that water boil away. And then when it gets down just a little more, we're going to add just a pat of butter and just kind of let the butter just glaze over the peas. Our base for our shepherd's pie is done. That is ground round with some celery and some onions and tomato sauce and seasoned salt and fresh ground pepper. Be careful, don't add any salt to this until you taste it, because the seasoned salt can be salty, because that's the primary ingredient in it. So you really don't need to add any additional salt. Now, our potatoes were done, so we went ahead and drained them, and right now we're just going to make mashed potatoes. The way I make them, I like butter. I just love butter. I add a lot of butter to mashed potatoes. I added like 3 tablespoons or so of real butter. I do like real butter. I'm not a big fan of margarine. If that's what you like, that's fine. That's up to you. And we're going to add some salt to our potatoes. Some people salt the water when they boil potatoes. I don't. I just add a little bit at the end. I'm not a big, you'll find as you watch these cooking programs, I'm not a salt person. I just really don't like my food to have a lot of salt in it. But if you do, then that's fine. Now, some people like to use a potato masher. I just like the hand mixer. I've got a little bit of whole milk. I'm going to just add a little bit and see where I am. You want your potatoes to be firm. You don't want them to be runny. You want them to be, kind of still on the firm side, and I can tell I need just a tiny bit more. Let's turn this up just a little bit. I love mashed potatoes, don't you? It's just one of those comfort foods, and I'll tell you, my Austin would eat mashed potatoes every single day of the week if I would make them. And if I were home doing this, you know who would have this mixer in their hands, don't you? We have to put a pot holder on the floor because they're not tall enough to reach the counter, and I don't want them up there with a hot, something hot. Need to add just a little bit more milk. And they get the beater, and they make the mashed potatoes, and then they lick the beaters, as we all do. Remember how you do that as a child. When we bake a cake, then we have to, they have to lick the beaters, just kind of scrape down your bowl. You want your potatoes to be, a little bit firm. You don't want them real runny. You want them to have just some texture to it, and this is about right. And I'm just a firm believer that you should, taste everything as you go to check for your seasoning. So don't fall off there. Stay where you are. Let me grab a little spoon and let me just taste the potatoes. And I notice when I sit down to eat dinner, I'm not hungry. And that's because I have tasted the entire time I've been cooking. So let's taste. Nope, they're perfect. They don't need another thing. So let's just put this to the side. Now, to complete this dish, put your potatoes to the side. You need a baking dish. I've just got a simple baking dish. I just sprayed it with an olive oil spray. And you want to take your meat mixture. Be very careful. And you're going to pour that into the bottom of your pan. And just get all of that goodness out of there. spread that out in the bottom of your pan. Just kind of spread it out and pat it down a little bit. Take your mashed potatoes and just pile them on top. Yum, it looks so good and it smells so good. I just love, this is one of my favorite things. It's just so comforting, and it's just, you know, it just is so good. You could serve this most certainly with a green salad, any kind of salad that you like. I love peas, so I'm just going to do it with just a little bit of a frozen pea. Just spread out your potatoes. Just kind of cover the meat. Spread it out. And then what you're going to do is take cheddar cheese, yummy cheese. Any kind of cheese you like will work in this. This is just a sharp cheddar cheese that's already grated. You can buy it in the dairy section. And just spread your cheese on top. Use as much or as little or as much as you like. Then take it and put it in your oven that you have preheated. And you are just going to let that melt, and it's going to be so yummy, yummy, yummy. Our peas are almost there. When the water is almost gone, add about a tablespoon of your butter right there in the pan, and just let that melt into the peas. Let's finish our wonderful, wonderful strawberry shortcake. Now, like I said, I just bought a sour cream pound cake from my grocery store. You can make your own if you want to, and just cut you out a slice of your pound cake, and then take some of these delicious strawberries. They looked so good this morning. They just, oh, they were just so yummy, I just couldn't resist them. Take a few strawberries and put in there. I love, in your dairy department, or not in the dairy, but in the fruits and vegetable section, if you have never purchased this, it's just, I get the sugar-free strawberry glaze for your strawberries, and just drizzle some of that yummy strawberry glaze over it. Then, of course, what, you know, you have to have whipped cream. You could make your own whipped topping from fresh whipping cream if you wanted. I just use the Cool Whip type products that you get in the grocery store. And there you go, and there's our dessert, and doesn't that look good? And you know, they say life is short, eat dessert first, so we might just do that today. But there's our strawberry shortcake. Our peas are finishing up. It just takes a minute, and I've lost my spoon. Let me go here. It just takes a minute for those to just, you're just wanting to kind of let that water evaporate out of there. And you put the butter in. Remember, we put about a tablespoon of butter. So let's get a platter, and let's go ahead and give us a serving of peas. Turn your eyes off. Remember to turn your eyes off. I just like a simple side dish with this. And I just love peas, so I really, that's just easy, you know, it's easy to cook when you come home and you're tired. Now let's check our shepherd's pie. Let me get my privet up here because I guarantee you it's hot. It just takes a moment. All you're really trying to do is melt the cheese, and it's good and it's gooey and it's done. Let's get our shepherd's pie out of the oven, and we'll shut that door in a minute. And can we see that? Can we get a good picture of that shepherd's pie? Take your spoon. I'll use my pea spoon. Get you a big helping of that shepherd's pie. Put that on your plate. And there you go. And dinner is served. And we've got shepherd's pie, peas, and strawberry shortcakes. Enjoy, and I will see you next time. It's time for me to eat.
If you enjoyed this episode of Everyday Manna and would like a copy of today's recipes, please write Living Faith Television, CO Everyday Manna, P.O. Box 1867, Abingdon, Virginia, 24212, or visit our website at www.livingfaithtv.com. Please be sure to include the program number found on the bottom of the screen in your letter so we will know which recipes you would like. Thanks for watching and join us again for the next episode of Everyday Manna.